Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wolverine.com postgame show. We're live at Regents Field in downtown Ann Arbor, in a very happy downtown Ann Arbor. Let's hear it. Right, the masses are out today. Michigan wins 27-24 over number 11 USC in a game that, listen, when you play these big showdown type of games like this, I grade them pass-fail. Did you win? Did you lose? There's a lot of things in that box score that weren't pretty. The second half, in a lot of ways, was not pretty. But when push came to shove, you needed to play. You got it late from Kalel Mullings, and you got it from a Michigan defense that, outside of a few busts, I thought won you this football game. A lot to go through. We'll talk offensive and defensive takeaways. We'll give out some game balls. We'll take your questions to close out the show. Of course, Anthony Broome here with former Michigan Wolverine Ryan Van Bergen. And Ryan, let's just hop right into it. Your thoughts, your all-encompassing thoughts on what was today's victory.
I think we finally have an identity to what our team is and what we can be this year. It's not the same team we were last year. And there's some things that carry over from last year, but this team has its own identity and its own ways to find success. And I think today we saw some glimpses of what our team could look like this year. Was it pretty at all times? Absolutely not. But it got the job done. And it got the job done in a way that I feel like fits what we want to see from Michigan football. It was physical. It was tough. It was disciplined. It was, it was consistent. And I feel like that's something that we've been missing. And it, I think, invigorates myself and I think a lot of the other fan base, because at one point we're kind of feeling pretty desolate about what our team may do this year. But I still think USC is pretty solid as a team. And for Michigan to bully them and kind of execute at will in a game with an opponent that caliber, to me, that says that there's still some good life left in this team, and there's still the potential for this team to get better and be around at the end for the purposes of Big Ten, because that's all I'm focused on is Big Ten.
Yeah, I think coming out of this game, there was a lot on the line today. I mean, this is, what type of stakes you have while you're playing October football. This is what type of stakes you have in terms of having something to hang your hat on. And listen, as a group of USC fans, just welcome by. Welcome to the Big Ten. 45 carries, 291 yards. That's Big Ten football. And if Michigan was going to win this game, it had to be a fist fight. It had to be what we just saw. In a lot of ways, I mean, a game like this, so unconventional, so weird, especially, with essentially not winning, winning without a passing game. I think for Michigan fans, it's kind of like chicken soup for the soul, right? A lot of happy fans walking these streets of Ann Arbor. I mean, I walked from the press box to Regents Field. It's about a 25-minute walk. It was a glide today. It was like a cartoon character, levitating towards a windowsill that had a pie in it. That's what that walk to this place was like today. So excited to break it down on both sides of the ball. We'll talk about the offense. We'll talk about the defense. We will hand out some game balls and take your questions like we do every week. Before we do that, we have just a little bit of shout-outs and housekeeping to take care of here. We are brought to you today, not only by our gracious hosts here at Regents Field, but we are brought to you by MyPerfectFranchise.net. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Are you looking for a side hustle while working your current job? Are you wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy? Andy can help. Andy Luedecke is a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner, and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he is here to help you. If you have any questions about owning a business, you can learn more about him by heading over to myperfectfranchise.net. You can call him at 404-973-9901. You can also email him at Andy@myperfectfranchise.net and book some time with him. Meet with him, find an opportunity that works for you, and Andy will hook you up. He's been a great partner to us and our website. I'll let you pick today, co-host. Are we starting on offense or are we starting on defense? Because I think there's a case to be made to rave about the run game, rave about the defensive performance, but today I'm putting the ball in your court. What do you come out of this game, the side of the ball that you were most encouraged by?
I'm going to go with offense because I feel like we've had 3 games now where we've all been scratching our heads and wondering, what can this team even prospectively be offensively? And I feel like we finally look like we have, again, an identity on offense. Some of the things that I saw today that I really, really liked, and we can get into more of the details about it, but run game, specifically in the run game, I thought you saw a lot more success because we started to run the man in the gap scheme instead of zone. And for those who don't know that are listening, there's very big differences between the blocking scheme, depending on if you're doing a zone blocking scheme or a man blocking scheme. In a man blocking scheme, that's when you're going to see those double teams, the pulling guards, those types of things. And in the first 3 games, we've had a lot more success with those style runs than the zone runs. And I feel like potentially we've been overcoaching and trying to keep ourselves from tipping our hand and trying to make sure that our tendencies don't get revealed, that, we want to have a good mix of both of these. But screw it, man. If they can't stop the man blocking and the combo blocking, run it at them until they find a way to stop it. And I really liked what we did today, both schematically with the run and with the consistency with the run. And even with Alex Orji, I feel like there were times where we had guys that we were taking shots down the field just to keep them honest, at least in the first half. But in general, I don't think anyone would have sat here on a podcast pregame and said that I bet Michigan controls the clock. I bet you they control time of possession. Those are things that this team, we weren't sure that they had the capacity for. And I'm not saying that they're world beaters, but this isn't a team you can win with. This is an offense you can win with. You can beat good teams. USC is a good team, and we beat a good team today with an offense that had an identity, had a goal, went out and achieved that goal, and all 11 guys on the unit were bought in. And so to me, that's super encouraging, because I was worried that we were turning into Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too where, you look at the box score, and we know that when Alex Orji is your quarterback, it fundamentally changes what this thing is going to look like. Like, you're not going to air the ball out. You're not going to take a ton of shots down the field. You look at the box score, 7 for 12, 32 yards. It was pretty sorry at times. But in the first half, I think you saw, and they got away from it a bit in the second half, really just could never get ahead of the sticks or anything like that until late in this game. But Alex Orji at quarterback forces you to be more creative as a play caller, because if you're not, it's going to look like what the last quarter and a half of the game looked like until, Khalil Mullings goes beast mode on that final drive. And let's park on Khalil Mullings for a second, because you look at him before that final drive, or there was a point in this game, Donovan Edwards finishes this, and I'm not going to use this as an excuse, as a platform to bash Donovan Edwards. That guy shows up in big games. He had a 41-yard touchdown today. That was huge in the first half. 14 carries, 74 yards. But there was one point in this game where Donovan Edwards is out carrying Khalil Mullings 14-8. And at this point, that cannot happen. Khalil Mullings is your best offensive player. He is the guy that I think you can make the argument single-handedly saved your game, saved maybe your season, at least for now. I said it last week. There's room for both of these guys to have a role in this offense, but I don't see a reason why he shouldn't get 20 carries a game, regardless of how well Donovan Edwards is playing, regardless of how many times you dial up a run for Alex Orji. He is your best player on offense, and it's time to kind of build the airplane out of that, so to speak.
I don't disagree with you. I feel like I've been thumping my chest to anyone who will listen that Khalil Mullings needs to be the workhorse of this offense, especially you get the bulk of the carries. And again, I am in the same boat with you. I'm not anti-Donovan Edwards. I just think he's situational. He needs a certain set of circumstances to find success, where Khalil Mullings, you can put him in a hallway that has no room and he will make a door and find somewhere to go. And I feel like Khalil Mullings finally is starting to get utilized in the proper way. And I hope for Donovan Edwards' sake, he gets used in a more efficient way. And that's one of the things that we talked about. We were talking after the Texas game, and everybody was wondering what you're going to see for Sherrone more in the rest of the season. We wanted to see progression. We wanted to see development. And to me, this was a huge step overall, offense, defense, special teams has been solid, but overall, this was a huge step forward for the team because I feel like we've established what can we do well and what can we make other teams have to account for. And you got to account for Khalil Mullings running downhill with good blocking. That's going to win a lot of football games. That's all we need offensively. Just don't turn it over, and they took care of it today. So I'm excited about where we can go from here. This is a great first step. We're not where we need to be, but let's continue to build off this.
Yeah, in a lot of ways too, it almost feels like, and you can make the argument, it's a brand new season because it's that first game of Big Ten play. It almost is like hitting the complete reset button on setting the bar for the offense, what it can be. Listen, I'm not going to go crazy about the Alex Orji box score at quarterback. I think that when you throw for 32 yards on 12 attempts, like, listen, that's pedestrian. That's worse than pedestrian. That's bad. But it comes with, and really this is kind of how I feel about this performance as a whole, is that, this team still has not played its best four-quarter football game. And when you can play a team like USC, who, listen, I don't think USC was the 11th best team in the country. I don't think Michigan was the 18th best team in the country. But on the playing field that we saw Saturday, they're equals. And that's a coin flip game. It's a game you weren't favored to win. It's a game that all the analytics you point to would suggest that you're not going to win it. And you found a way, and you set a foundation. You've got Minnesota next week now. Your first road trip in a couple weeks at Washington. You have some momentum now because, listen, there's still question marks here, and we haven't even mentioned this yet. You win this game without Colston Loveland, who we talk about how Khalil Mullings is your best player on offense right now. Colston Loveland is 1A, 1B, however you want to put it. So that's a gutty offensive performance from them. And again, we asked last week, they run for 301 yards. We're like, is this sustainable? Can they keep it rolling here? They just did it against a conference opponent, which USC, they are improved, but, again, that was a welcome to the Big Ten moment for them and kind of a reestablishing of what Michigan is and they want to be in this game. So any other thoughts on offense before we move to the other side of the ball?
I want to give a little shout out and credit to the receivers because I think that's something that is going to get looked over and something that if you're on the outside looking in, you might think that Michigan must have no one at receiver because no one's getting any touches. There's no yards. And these guys, if you look at their statistics, there's nothing that's going to pop off this page, but they were committed to the cause. And knowing that you're going into this game with Alex Orji at quarterback, no Colston Loveland, odds are they're going to run this football 40, 50 times. And as a receiver, I've never played that position, but I can imagine the mindset that could happen or could creep in that it's easy to get frustrated that I'm out here blocking, 90% of the snaps I'm out here. But those guys on some of those longer runs, if you look at who the last block was that got them totally free, it was a receiver that had been holding their block for 2 real life seconds, 3 real life seconds. And if you don't know, that is forever in the game of football to stock block someone as athletic as a DB. So it's one of those things that I understand the concern that we don't have playmakers at receiver and that we're not having guys that are deep threats. And those are all probably reasonable criticisms. But for today, those guys deserve some sort of recognition for what they did. And blockers overall. I mean, we think we've been very critical of the offensive line. We haven't discussed it yet, but there was a change. Crippen got some good reps at center and replaced Judice. And I think El Hadi had a better game. Link had a better game. They pulled those guys a lot more, which I think is what helps them rather than run to their side. But overall, the offensive line had a good game, and Miles Hinton and Preeb, is it Josh Preeb? But those two guys, left tackle, left guard, that's our honey hole. The B gap on the left side is where anything big is going to hit because those guys are doing work, and they deserve some of the credit that they probably don't get enough of for today's game, along with the receivers, anybody else who put their ass on the line to block today. I think you're mute, Anthony.
Somehow I got muted. Okay, somehow I got muted there. Yeah, I like the kudos for the wide receivers. I think that you basically turned into a service academy offense today, but in the here and now, when you needed those guys to block their rear ends off and help open up some holes in the run game, job well done across the board. So again, We have a comment here from David Ross who says it's probably not sustainable, but orgy will progress as the year goes on. Yeah, I mean, when you throw for 32 yards in a football game, that's probably not sustainable. The same way that, I feel like this game has come up a few times now this year, but that Washington game a couple years ago where Michigan ran for 300 yards, 400 yards, whatever it was, Cade McNamara threw for 44 yards. And we did this post-game show then, and people said, not going to beat Ohio State like that, not going to win big games like that. Well, no, it's probably not sustainable, but on today, it's what worked. So
and I'm just going to jump at you, David Ross, that I think a run game is more sustainable than a passing game, and I think USC is probably a good testament to that. These guys normally put up 40, 50 points, and that wasn't sustainable against a solid defense. I would argue that that's a misconception that the general population may have, but a sustainable offense is one that can get 4 yards every play on the ground, not one that can get the ball 400 yards in a game passing. Just my defensive take on it.
Yeah, and I think, too, I mean, so many people will say, and just think of how many weird box scores this program has had, even in just the last 3 years. I mean, you play a game at Penn State last year where you do not throw the ball the last 33 times in a game, and you can come on and say, oh, that was great and it was fun, but it's not sustainable. No, I mean, again, in a game like this, like I said earlier, it's pass, fail, whatever you need to do to win the game, and if Michigan's going to win games, it's going to need to run the ball well and control the line of scrimmage. I thought they did a great job with that today. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. The first half was, I thought, the absolute best version of this Michigan defense. You're getting to Miller Moss. He was on his ass that entire first half. No big plays. Really, the field goal was really all that they had surrendered. You look at this game, and you look at the final box score. It's 379 total yards. Miller Moss throws for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. They run for over 100 yards. And if I tell you both of those things happen, Michigan fans are probably thinking that this is a loss for them. I thought the defense, when it needed to step up, especially Will Johnson, who, again, in one of those gotta-have-it situations, and mind you, he misses the last, I think it was quarter and a half of the game. Sherrone Moore said after the game he could have come back in. Doesn't seem like anything to be majorly concerned with. I'd argue when you get x-rays, I am concerned about that. But Will Johnson, much like the game a couple weeks ago against Fresno State, if you try that guy, he's going to make a big play, and he's probably going to take it in for a touchdown. So defensively, 4 sacks today, 8 tackles for loss. Finally, a little more disruption, a little more being the hammer, not the nail. I thought a couple weeks ago Texas really took it to those guys. I thought those guys were outstanding for most of the game today.
I think you've really got to give a tip of the cap to the defensive line and the front seven, but the defensive line specifically, I feel like there was a dominance in the trenches from our defense to their offense. I think they were at negative 16 rushing yards at half. Don't quote me on that, but it was very small and made them a one-dimensional team. And I think USC against a different opponent can find some balance between running and passing. But the way that Michigan defense played, it turned them into a one-dimensional team. As much as we were running the ball and going down their throat, they could not seem to get any traction in their run game. And that's due to the guys up front. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham especially. Mason Graham probably gets my game ball if it's not Will Johnson. I know we're not there yet. But Mason Graham had a terrific game. Josiah Stewart finally showed back up and started making some disruptive plays. He was beating his man consistently. Josiah Stewart, credit to him, something that someone else may not have seen, but at the end of the game there in their last series, they are motioning a Y, or motioning a tight end or a back, and making sure that he gets accounted for with more than just the tackle, because they were not going to let him go one-on-one with their left tackle anymore. So credit to the guys up front, and especially the 4 pass rushers and 4 guys that kept the run from getting downfield. And everybody played a really good game. I think there's areas where we could get better. I think schematically, there were some things that we missed, but overall, I really like the physicality and the violence that we played with. You never want to see guys get hurt, so I don't want to be quoted as saying something to that effect, but if you notice the guys that are on the field after plays, a lot of them weren't wearing Michigan uniforms because Michigan was coming up, and this is on offense too, but Michigan was coming up with bad intentions to tackle ball carriers. And I thought that was something that there was a little bit more swagger to the defense, a little bit more confidence that everybody seemed to play with all the way around. So I really was impressed with the defense, but the defensive line specifically, I feel like really answered the bell.
1,000%. And again, coming out of the locker room, things got a little weird and your average fan has a comment here. It says, coming out of the half, they started doing very weird D-line subs, DTs with backup edges and vice versa. Mason Graham wasn't on the field the last 2 plays. They were dropping TJ Guy into coverage. Yeah, I thought that was a mistake. I mean, you said a 20-minute break in the locker room. It's kind of that's a huge drive with USC having the ball coming out of halftime. The substitution stuff was weird. There was a busted coverage, or I don't know if it was a busted coverage or if it was the call. They gave up a touchdown. Zeke Berry blitzes from the nickel position. And I just think, it's going to frustrate the hell out of Michigan fans. I think there are just going to be busts like that at times with a Wink Martindale defense. It's not, I won't say it's acceptable, but through 4 weeks, I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that we're going to see a lot of that. But overall, I mean, when you needed a play, Will Johnson made one. I thought Kenneth Grant played his best game of the year. I thought Josiah Stewart had a good opener and then played, was kind of absent for a few weeks, got back on track today in a big way. Guy I want to give some flowers to, Jair Hill. Wasn't perfect, had a couple mistakes here and there, but I thought by far his best performance of the year. Especially, late in that game, you have Jair Hill and Amir Hall playing quarterback with Will Johnson not in the game. So I thought for the most part, that secondary played pretty well too. And, outside of, I got to check the box score here. Zachariah Branch had that 42-yard catch. Other than that, and Makari Page on the 3rd and 16 touchdown they gave up. That can't happen either. But other than that, I mean, the defense won them this football game, period.
Yeah, the secondary showed up huge, considering what I think the challenge was between USC's skill guys and what they've been able to do with Lincoln Riley at the helm. They're supposed to have a very good passing game, and I feel like we did a very good job 90% of the time being where we're supposed to be, correct alignment. The things that I would offer as criticisms are there's times where we bring pressure where I feel like it's wildly unnecessary. The red zone where the field's already small and you've had good pressure with 3, 4, 5 rushers. We bring 6, I believe, on their second touchdown, and we leave the slot wide open. No one's around. That can't happen. On a great defense, you don't have times where you're that poorly misaligned. The thing that I also see coming up somewhat regularly, and we didn't clean it up all the way today, and it's going to burn us, is we don't do so well in zone. At times, there's times where you see guys in zone. If you just watch Michigan DBs on pass plays, when they're in zone, they don't look up any receivers. Their eyes are on quarterbacks the whole time. And that works to your benefit when Will Johnson takes one and goes back to pick 6, but it works against you when you have, that last 3rd and 16 and our corner decides to drop off in his zone when there's no one threatening him and Makari Page is slow to get over the top. There should have been 2 guys in that coverage, but because we didn't play the zone well, we blew the coverage. And to me, there's times where it's just like slap your head, like, guys, come on, we can do better than this. But I also think that I need to temper expectations. As much as Wink Martindale may be an OG and he has got a lot of experience, it still is his first year and his first September with these guys that he's working with. So some of those things are expected, but I do think we could help ourselves by not overcoaching, I guess is what I'd say, in some of those situations. But again, really, really good job by the defense. And I think that this was a great challenge to give them some confidence that they can be dominant moving forward.
Another lesson learned today, when you're a defensive tackle and you pick up a fumble, you have to secure the ball. Don't let someone rip it out of your hands down the field. That was a pretty big, that was huge. That was the difference between getting off the field and giving, I think 1 or 2 plays later was that Zeke Berry busted coverage. So And then I didn't even talk about this in the offense segment. I mean, the fumble from Donovan Edwards, those are seniors making those, or that's a senior making that mistake. Can't happen. Makari Page's bust in the end zone. That's a fifth-year guy making the mistake. Can't happen. So I think if there's any disappointment today, it's that some of your best players made some of the biggest, most egregious mistakes you can make, but they found a way to fight through it. And they owe Khalil Mullings a steak dinner, and Mason Graham a steak dinner. That defensive line a steak dinner. Any other thoughts on the defensive side of the ball? I thought that, again, run game, the box score will say you gave up 96 yards. 65 of that was on one run from Willie Marks. And another compliment for Jair Hill. You're able to tackle that guy down the field, save a touchdown. That's a huge play in this game, too. But any other thoughts on the defensive side of the ball?
Not really. I just want to see us continue to grow from this, because I think USC offensively is probably a top 15 offense. I don't know about overall as a team, but I think that defensively we've had some scares here through 3 weeks. And to me, this brought me down, calmed me down, and made me come back to thinking that this is prospectively a top 10, top 15 Michigan defense. And we should be playing that way as we progress through the season. The one thing I guess I will leave on is that I think this year might be one of the least impressive in terms of depth at some certain positions. We've been kind of spoiled by having not much drop off. And I think that may explain the switch that you saw at half with the defensive line rotation. Right now, there's a really big drop-off. When Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant come off and Rashawn Benny, and I'm blanking on who comes in to replace the other side, but Rashawn Benny comes in, there's a drop-off in what we're able to do at the defensive tackle position. And I feel like that's something that we've been spoiled with not having to deal with because we've had so much depth. But as well as they played, I also want to see more of these guys having the same success, because to me that solidifies that this will be not just good this year, but good for the future.
Absolutely. Before we get into game balls, because so from here we'll do our game balls, we'll take questions, then probably get out of here pretty soon. I want to talk trajectory. I want to talk what's next, and maybe producer behind the scenes, if we can get maybe the schedule up here in a second. I mean, I want to start by asking you this. Minnesota next week, you go to Washington. In the last few years, we've learned a lot about what this Michigan team can be when they've gone on the road for the first time. Still have five home games in a row. Listen, it's great to play at home, but I think they're kind of eager for that test at this point. So you have Minnesota next week for the Little Brown Jug at the Big House. You go to Washington, who they've got a lot of issues too, a lot of similar issues, more issues really. I mean, they flipped their entire roster, brand new head coach and all of that. And then there's a bye week. So really it's this sprint to the bye week now. And you're going to come back and play an Illinois team that is, I believe, 5-0, that should be ranked when those two teams play in Champaign. You're going to have a rivalry game with Michigan State, who's playing right now. And then it's November football. I'm just looking at next week / the month of October. How do you feel now after 4 games about this team's trajectory and where they stack up with these other teams that are on the schedule prior to when Oregon comes to town on November 2nd, I believe it is?
I think it's all about where we go from here. As corny and hokey as it may be, the other teams to me don't matter as much as what can Michigan do to become the best version of our brand of football. Because as you look at the schedule, Minnesota, I think, is a team that we should be able to beat regardless of whether or not we play our best game. If we play our worst game, it's going to be a tough one. But if we play good to above average, we should win that game. Same thing with Washington. As much as they were a good team last year, I feel like their cabinets are bare. There's no difference between, to me, Michigan this year and Washington this year in terms of their new coach coming in and having to kind of turn over and restart, so to speak. And then you get into the second half of the schedule, and Illinois is a surprise, but they're going to be very tough. Michigan State will play their very best game. Who knows where Oregon's going to be? So to me, I think we have 2 more weeks to get through season number 1. And where can we be at the end of these 2 weeks? And what can we have that we know we can go into the second half of the season with and compete in some football games. Because I don't see any games on that schedule that we can't win, and that includes the last one. But the way we're playing now, even though we feel good about a win versus USC, that's not a good enough Michigan team, in my opinion, to beat what I think Ohio State's capable of being this year. But we also progressed more from last game to this game than I thought we would have. So there's still a lot of football left to be played. There's still a lot of growth and development that can happen between now and the end of November. So to me, I just think about, okay, we have 2 more games. Let's go 2-0 and then get to this bye week. And we'll be a 1-loss team at the bye, and we'll come tackle the second half of the season.
5-1 at the bye would be massive. Because I think Illinois is a winnable game on the road. You got Michigan State at home. I still don't really know what they are, but that's a rebuilding team. You know, you get to 5-1, I think that sets up 7-1, and then November is prove it month, and that's where you really see what this team is made of, and that's the last few years where we've seen the best version of Michigan emerge in crunch time there. So, thank God for the victory. You come out of it feeling much better about what comes next, because I mean, I really do think that there's a fine line. If they had lost this game today, I could have seen them losing 6 or 7 games. Now I feel like you've stabilized yourself. You've given yourself an opportunity here to get better, to improve on what this week was. And I mean, this really is the toughest opponent that you'll see until you play Oregon, in my opinion. So let's get into questions now. We'll start with this one from Welch's McGee, who says, what is Will Johnson's injury status? That would be a big loss. We talked about it briefly earlier. It seems like they avoided something major. It sounds like he could have come back in the game. I'd argue if he could have come back in the game, he should have come back in the game. But it doesn't seem like anything to be concerned with long-term. Ryan, what were your thoughts when you saw that Will Johnson was not on the field late in that game?
It's always a good sign when he walks under his own power up the tunnel, even if he is going to get x-rays. What I do know is Michigan won't disclose the seriousness of the injury, and they'll be pretty dismissive about it in press conferences. But the thing I feel good about is Will Johnson, in my opinion, with the next 2 games plus a bye week, we've got some time before I think he's going to be imperative to our success. And I do think Illinois, I've only seen them now once, but I watched them play Nebraska, and they've got a quarterback, they've got a passing game. We will need Will Johnson to have success at Illinois. So as long as he has nothing that's broken, that can't be casted, I know he'll be out there sometime in October, if not sooner.
Go to this comment from BTC, who says, lots to build on today. This team now has an identity. I'm excited about what's possible here. I questioned Orji, but he played a great game. And I'll piggyback that off of this question here from Neil Wiggins, who says, one way to never have an interception is to never attempt to throw. But is that a winning formula? And I'll throw that one to you.
I do know that you lose games if you give 3 away. So if your strategy is to not turn the ball over and you opt not to throw the ball, I think as long as you're having success with it, there's nothing wrong with that strategy. I know people aren't going to like that answer, but to me, if you can win football games without putting the ball up in the air, why would you? Why risk it? There's no point. I would have challenged someone who's much better with me at mathematics, probabilities, and statistics. But if you can average 4 or 5 yards on the ground every carry, why would you risk every throw has a certain percentage chance of getting turned over versus run? And so I just feel like if you have a great defense, ball control and time of possession become really important. So I'm not saying that we should completely resort to no throws, but I'm all for this heavy dose of run offense as long as you stay creative and as long as you have different ways of presenting it and it finds success on the field. The thing that's going to hurt us, and we'll all eat crow happily, is when we get into a game, if we get behind early in a game. This team is, the way we play, is not built to come down from 14-0. We get up 14-3, feel pretty good, but our formula for success, if we want to keep doing this, is we have to be on top or be tied, because getting behind with this offense, is not going to end well.
Counterpoint. They put a game-winning drive together. So they were down and came back. Thank you, Khalil Mullings, for that. I like this comment from Mr. Dave. 3 things can happen if you throw 2 of them are bad. That's fair. Really, 4 things can happen because you can complete a pass or it could be a touchdown as well. So, yeah, I agree with that. Lewis Blake says, Anthony, does this restart your win streak of seeing Michigan win in person? Yeah, we're up to 2 now. Before the Texas loss, I had not seen them lose in person since the Citrus Bowl against Alabama. So that was sobering. It was going to come to an end eventually, but yes, we do have a new win streak here, and I'll be back next week. I'll be there the next 2 weeks, so we'll see if we can't keep it open. Your average fan, Ryan. This is maybe a good one for you. Who typically controls the substitutions on the defensive line? Is it Wink? Is it the defensive line coach? Is it a combination of both? What? Shed some light on that for the people.
Should be exclusively the defensive line coach, but there's a chance that Wink has been in his ear and said, hey, I don't like when you pull Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant at the same time, so let's make sure we only sub one or the other. We always want one of them present on the field. It would eventually, or at the end of the day, would fall on the D-line coach to follow through with that substitution policy, but there's probably some sort of goal of let's try to find a combination where we don't have a clear, line number 2 or subs line that gets taken advantage of when the offensive coordinator sees them come in.
Absolutely. We'll go to this one, and we still have. There's some room here for a few more questions, so get them in the queue here. We're probably looking at wrapping in the next 10 minutes or so. We'll take this one from Mr. Dave, who says, was this a big improvement for the offensive line, or is USC just that poor against the run?
I think it was a change in our schematic approach to running the football. Something that we've talked about and that I said maybe at the beginning of the show was I was so excited to see us be more tendent toward gap or man blocking scheme versus the zone running scheme. I feel like we've not had success with a lot of our zone early on this year, and we've had some success, at least mitigated success, with combo blocks, pulling guards, pulling tackles, and you saw more of that today. And I feel like that's what leads to our success in the run game is we need to have our offensive line set up for success. And our offensive line, for whatever reason, is just not as good as at executing the zone blocking. I'm not saying to abandon it completely because I think Khalil Mullings' big long one happened to be an inside zone play, but we do a lot better, in my opinion, when we have that gap, that man blocking scheme. And as a defensive lineman, when you're no good at taking on double teams and the offense catches on, it becomes a very long day at work. And so I get excited because I know what that does to your mentality as a defense when you know a double team comes and a pulling's coming and it doesn't matter. So I think the improvement from the offensive line is due to the change in the schematic approach and the way we called the plays versus just change in personnel, change in play call.
Got a couple questions here. One from Rich, also Brooks. Says, Anthony, are you going to Seattle? Lewis Blake also asked, Anthony, are you going to the Washington game? I will. I will see you in Seattle. A little bit of announcement. We will be doing a meetup for fans of Michigan, whether you're a Wolverine.com reader, watcher, or not. We will be doing a Friday meetup at Petoskey's in Seattle. Keep an eye on the social media and on the boards for more details on that. But yes, I will be there and we will be doing a meetup. So encourage your guys to come out and check that out. Your average fan says, do we feel like Orgy added enough to the run game? Having to account for another option seemed to help a lot.
Having Orgy, yes is the short answer, but having Orgy as a threat to run, not even necessarily actually running, but the threat to run, I feel like keeps defenses a little bit more honest. It used to drive me absolutely insane when we would do zone read with Cade McNamara and expect the defense to leave a guy out on the edge to stop Cade McNamara from tearing them up. No defense is going to do that. We'll rally to McNamara when he's off running his 5.2 40 and we'll catch up. Orgy, I feel like at least makes you maintain someone to make sure he doesn't break it. And then I also liked, I know that people are going to be upset that we were not successful with it, but I also liked that they allowed him to take some shots downfield. It wouldn't surprise me in the least to hear that he was told by Sherrone Moore that, hey, we're going to call some deep shots. Make sure you throw it over the receiver's head. We don't even want them to have a chance. Just make them think that we want to have the ball down the field, because I thought early on we got away from it, which I think bit us a little bit, but I think early on we had a good enough balance of Orgy potentially going the other direction of the flow of the run, and we had a couple plays where we threw it deep enough to where the safeties had to check, and I thought those two things gave us just enough for our run game. Khalil Mulling's first run doesn't hit if Alex Orgy isn't the guy handing him the ball, because he held someone in their position that would have cut him off. So just that one play is case in point. Orgy just being the guy that hands it off makes our offense better.
Yeah, and for me, I think at some point, teams are going to put on the film of this game or future games if it looks a lot like it did, and they are going to dare Alex Orgy to make a throw that maybe it's even a spoon-fed throw. Maybe it's like when you leave a three-point or the three-point line open for a guy that doesn't shoot the ball well. They'll say, go ahead, have it. We'll give it to you. If you make it, shame on us. We'll get you next time. At some point, they will need to hit on some of those. But today, I think it served its purpose. I think that, disappointing at times, but I just can't sit here and hate on, 290 yards rushing against a team the caliber of USC. Whether you buy into the fact if they're improved defensively or not, that's a top 12, top 15, maybe top 20 caliber opponent that does look better defensively this year, and you're able to impose your will, and to me that's huge. Let's go to this one from Jason, who says, what are your honest feelings of Kirk Campbell as a play caller?
I thought he did well today with what he had. I feel like you had to adapt what you were going to call based on what you have skill-wise. And when Orgy has skill-wise is not probably all volumes of Kirk Campbell's playbook, and that's fine. I think what Kirk Campbell did a good job with today, and I don't know if the credit goes to him or Sherrone Moore, I'm sure it's somewhat shared, but I thought he did a good job of mixing up the looks, a lot of pre-snap motions and changing the strengths, making sure the defense communicates and doesn't miss a line. But I thought we did a good job of, once we got into a 14-point win or 14-point lead, I feel like we did a good job of trying to maintain possessions, move the chains, but didn't try to do anything over the top. And I feel like that's something that maybe could have been a mistake made because you were in a position you weren't expecting to be up 14-3. But I feel like we did enough offensively to generate, get us up and down the field, generate good field position, generate some points. And with where our offense was, dying on the table, needing paddles to come back to life, today I felt a pulse. I saw him breathe on his own, and I'm here for what Kirk Campbell put together today, and I'm excited to see what he can do again next time.
Yeah, I think my biggest gripe with the offense right now is the amount of touches Khalil Mullings doesn't get in favor of Donovan Edwards. And again, that's like we talked about earlier, like that's on your position coach. That's something that Tony Alford needs to see on film. I mean, he ultimately controls what that rotation looks like. And listen, if you're going to double, triple, quadruple down on being a team that's going to run the football, I wouldn't mind seeing Ben Hall get a little more run as well. So other than that, good day at the office. If I told you were going to need to score 27 points to win, I think a lot of people would have been super uneasy about that. But they found a way, and it kind of goes hand in hand. I want to read this comment from the message board from W.C. Young, who says, title of this post is 4th and goal from the 2. It says, with the game and potentially the season on the line, no tricks, no gimmicks. Everyone in the stadium knows that Michigan's going to run up the middle, and they still get significant push and punch it in. Is there anything more beautiful than that? And I think that might be, we'll take a few more questions here, but that's the Michigan recipe. That's exactly what it's looked like when they've done well, when you're able to, impose your will. And again, credit to those guys for coming up big late.
If you want to enjoy yourself this evening, go watch that play one more time and watch Max Bredesen, because Max Bredesen comes across and he lays out a linebacker, just puts him flat on his back from feet to back, and turns around to see where Mullings is to see if he should find more work, and realizes Mullings is coming right down him. So he turns around, and as this guy that he just pancaked is getting up, he pancakes him again. And I don't know if I've ever seen someone get pancaked twice on the same play. But to me, that just brought obviously the score brings joy to your heart. But watching a guy that is your team captain, that is kind of the staple of what this Michigan offense is, just, I don't know how attractive he is, but I'm going to call him an ugly football player, an ugly, gritty, nothing fancy about him, but he's going to hit you in your chin strap. And I thought that was a telltale sign. And another guy, we did the offensive breakdown, but another guy that I think is an unheralded hero. There's a lot of times that any big run that goes 3, 4, 5 yards, if Bredesen's in the game, the last cut was made off of his block, because he just finds people and lays them down. So I thought that was an exciting little microcosm of today's game.
Because I can be nitpicky because they won, and maybe I could have been even more nitpicky if they lost. I didn't like throwing on 3rd and goal on that last drive. I would have preferred
the second down run.
The second down throw.
Oh my God!
That's one where we can look at the play call and go, nope, don't like that. But yeah, I mean, the sentiment stands. Being able to run the football when everyone knows what's coming. I mean, that's what's defined this football team for the last few years. Going to end on this one for Michigan Go Blue 1, 2, 3, 4. And he says, I think we can win 9 games with this style of ball. Ohio State and Oregon will be tough, but let's beat Ohio State. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the trajectory now. I mean, now it's a one game at a time mentality, right? But there is that trajectory. What do you build on off of this? You're watching the film. You're building the game plan for next week. What's that thing that you want to hang your hat on and see get better also moving forward?
For me, it's coverage, especially on 3rd down. I feel like coverage on 3rd down, we've had some issues. There were some issues present today. There was a lot of times today where the receivers had opportunities to make plays on the ball, especially early for USC, and they had drops that were uncharacteristic, or they didn't make contested catches. And credit to Michigan for being there, but there were opportunities for USC to move the ball. So I'd like to see our coverage get a little bit better in some of those situations, especially zone, like we mentioned earlier. But overall, I feel like I just want to continue to see Michigan develop and grow and get to a point where we feel that Michigan can compete with the top 5 programs. And if we saw Texas again, it'd be a better game. And, that to me would be a huge success for this year, because we were pretty down on where we could be potentially at the end of this year. And now I feel like there's some life. There's a spark. This team could compete for a Big Ten championship if they progress and get better each and every week.
That's all I can ask for at this point is progression. I think that's where we're going to call it tonight. Thank you again, everyone here at Regents Field, for watching. Give yourselves a round of applause. First and foremost, what a win for Michigan. Michigan beats USC 27-24. Be sure to, I believe this flash sale is still going on the website. If you use the promo code GOBLUE, you can get an annual subscription to the Wolverine.com for 50% off as a new subscriber. So take advantage of that. Again, thank you to our friends here at Regents Field. Thank you to our sponsors at My Perfect Franchise. And hey, this was 4 of 5. Next week, game number 5 in Ann Arbor. We'll be back out here. Game time to be determined. It has not been set yet. We'll find out tomorrow what that looks like. But Michigan moves to 3-1, 27-24 win. Signature win for this team. Signature win for Sherrone Moore and the Wolverines. All there is to do now is go 1-0 next week. So for Ryan Van Bergen, for our producer Megan behind the scenes, for our friends here at Regents Field, I'm Anthony Broome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again next time.